Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Happy Cycle Show. I'm Britt.
And I'm Bia, and today we are discussing a very exciting topic, the cycle phases. So it's going to be like a mini course on the different phases of the cycle and how we use the inner seasons to describe each phase.
Amazing. I've been so excited to film this episode with you, even though we've been delaying it and we've been on our own little mission over the last few months, but we are back. I love the seasonal analogy. I think it's such a nice way to talk about the cycle, and it's a way that lots of people can relate to the different phases because there's lots of different ways you can discuss the cycle and explain it. But I really, really love this phase. Or this way, sorry, before we get in, I wanted to ask you where you are in your cycle and just do a little cycle check-in. So, where are you at the moment?
So I'm on day 28 and I have a 29, 30-day cycle. So I'm on the edge. Like I'm in deep, deep autumn. And we're going to discuss a lot about that, the luteal phase. So if I take a little bit longer to get my statement across, just be gentle with me. I'm kind to myself as well. But it's just another way. We are so hard on ourselves sometimes. But I think with this episode where we delve into we different, it helps just to, yeah, we know we're not the same every day. So I'm on day 28, Britt. Where are you?
I am day 21 and I've tracked ovulation to the day this month quite accurately, and I'm 6 days after ovulation. So I'm creeping into that. I mean, like that beginning part of autumn, but I'm still feeling quite summery. And a lot this will all make sense as we go into the different seasons. But I'm kind of waiting for the autumn vibes to hit, and the days are getting longer here or getting shorter here in the UK, and it's getting really dark and cold, and I still feel really good. So hopefully it won't hit. But you just never know. So yeah, we kind of we always kind of in sync at some point. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Feeling good, and ready to get in. So do you want to kick us off with the follicular phase? Before we get going, a lot of the texts and stuff that you read online will always start with the menstrual phase, and then it will go to the follicular, ovulation, and luteal phase. We both view the menstrual phase, even though it's day one of the cycle, it's almost like the end of the cycle. And as we'll get into, it's that report card that we see every single cycle to give us an sort of a summary of what the rest of what the previous month has been like. So for the case of discussion today, we are going to start with the follicular phase, which is the phase after your bleed. So Beard's going to take us through that, and then I'll be talking a bit more about ovulation, and then you'll continue with luteal, and then I'll end us off with the menstrual phase. So that is just a little overview. So over to you about the follicular phase.
Exciting stuff. So, like Britt said, there's 4 phases, and I think we all tend to just think we have one, the dreaded menstrual phase. But going through the cycle phases is so beautiful because it actually helps you realize you are different versions. And so the follicular is the spring version of yourself. So you just exited your winter and your whole cycle starts again. Your little follicle starts to grow. And I always say it's like a race. Let's say there's about 7 little follicles, and the brain starts them off, sets the race off with FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. And the race begins, and as they grow, they actually release estrogen. So this estrogen makes you feel excited. It's like spring, like things grow, like estrogen makes things grow as well. It grows your lining, builds the lining that you're going to shed in your winter. So if you break it down in mood, energy, and body, so the mood that you have is spring. And I think all of us can see the beauty in spring, right? Like everything starts to grow and there's new life. So in the beginning of this, after your period, you can feel the energy climbing up, like increasing. Climbing up's the wrong words, but increasing.
Yeah.
And the mood is you are excited again, like you can start things again. So I always say, if you're in an office, you can start feeling like, yes, your excitement to start new things like new projects increases, you can brainstorm. So that's the beauty of the estrogen that's actually increasing. It also picks up the energy. So you'll feel it in your exercise routine. That's a big one. So in your menstrual in the winter, you're not super excited necessarily to exercise and be out there, but follicular is where the energy starts to pick up again. And then on our body, so if you connect with your body again, I think you feel a lot more resilient.
Mm.
You can push a little bit harder. Like you can feel, yes, last week I did the exercise, but I can do it a little bit harder. So I think that is the summary of the follicular phase is you feeling more outward focused. So that's a big one that you can use to summarize the follicular phase. And new growth, excitement. Like you're excited to do stuff again and write if you write blogs or whatever job you do. Yeah, that is your spring. Did I miss anything, Britt?
I think I love that. I love the rising energy because when I talk about the menstrual phase, you'll see that that's when the energy is at its lowest. One thing I wanted to say, and it's almost like spring is the precursor to ovulation, which is when you have that peak energy. So this is like the little introduction to ovulation time. I just want to be mindful that it's also spring can be really like a tender time. So if people have a bleed and then they're wanting to go, 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 if they push themselves too much, they might overdo it in that phase. Obviously, see how you're feeling and do what your body is happy with, but it is still a tender time. It's that springy time approaching that ovulation. That's when you can really push and do your, like, give it your all in a way. So it is still a tender time. I think. Yeah, you summarized it really, really well. It's the start of a new cycle, so it's almost like a like an exhale is the bleed, and then you start to inhale again, if that makes sense.
I love that. You know what I also see it as? So we have all a normal calendar, right? We have a book. We plan our whole lives according to the calendars. But,
Mm,
and I think for you as well, we do it differently. So I use the spring, my spring, that's my energy where I plan my month. It
mm,
doesn't matter where I am in the calendar month day. I'm like, okay, I'm in spring, so I can plan my next month. It's
mm,
great. You have a bit more energy for laying it out.
mm,
Being like, okay, cool, I'm expecting my period there. So what is there social events coming in this month? Do I really want to see a friend? What things can I plan for this month according to my seasons, according to my energy? Because I think with this whole episode, you're going to realize that spring beer, summer beer is not necessarily winter beer.
mm.
And that helps you a lot to, like you said, with that energy reservation, what's the word for it? Conservation? No, it's not the right word for it. I think planning your energy according to your cycle is so important so that you can be optimum in all of the different phases.
Yeah, I love that. I think the word is just reserving. Reservation is the right word. So just like I I do plan my life according to my cycle, and I have done for many years now. And people think I'm a bit crazy, and not that I make it let it control my life. I just am more in touch with what's happening on my inner world, so that I can, like you said today, you're on day 28, and if your brain is maybe not functioning and you're not getting your words across or getting your points across, it's okay. You can still film a podcast, you can still do a presentation if you need to, but it's just that understanding that deep down that you're not maybe in the best time of your cycle and that's okay. And it's almost just preserving your energy and not kind of throwing it all at every single phase because you will burn out doing it that way. So, yeah, I really love that. I was planning a meeting with one of my colleagues next week, and he said to me, "Will you be okay to have a meeting next week?" I said, "I'm probably going to be really grumpy, but if you can handle me in my premenstrual, like we can have the meeting. But just so you know, I'm going to be super grumpy." He's like, "Yeah, it's fine. I'll handle you at that phase. It's fine." So I'm still going to have the meeting, but I might be grumpy.
But you know what, Britt? I also find that it's a lot more internal. Because
Yeah.
if I probably didn't mention to you I was on day 28, would you have noticed?
No, I told you you look beautiful for day 28.
So, but I feel a bit like a bit more awkward in some for some reason. So it's an
Yeah.
internal thing. The seasons are inner seasons.
Yeah, that's a good point as
So
well.
very big one. So I think for also the women listening to this, it's your inner season. So it is definitely what you're feeling, but you can still do anything you want. I mean, but
Yeah.
the more you understand yourself, the easier it is to just be like, okay, I understand why I'm feeling a bit more awkward. It's not me. I didn't change anything. It's just where I am in my cycle.
Yeah,
So
and you tend to overthink it as well. And I think that's like an internal overthinking.
big
No,
one.
no one else really picks it up, but you like freaking out inside. They like, what
Such
do
a
you
big
mean?
one. Such a big one.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we now move from the spring energy, the follicular phase, will
Yeah.
you take us through the next one, the inner summer?
Yes, so I've got a couple notes on the side so I can just make sure I cover everything that I want to. But then we've got your ovulatory phase or ovulation. So before I get into that, ovulation is just a pinpoint time in the cycle. It's literally like over a couple of, I think it's an hour or so. Maybe you'll know how long that is. We don't know exactly, but it's a really quick time, quick amount of time, but the ovulation phase can be a little bit longer because we are approaching that ovulation time, and that's when our energy is rising and getting to that peak ovulation time or peak energy time, which is then when we have the ovulation. So it's not as um, easy for people to identify their ovulation unless they are tracking their cycle using cervical mucus or temperature, or even just writing things down or noticing any ovulation pain or things like that. So it's around, I've just written down here, it's around day 13 to 15 in your cycle-ish. It depends though. And it's all about your that peak energy. It's the high estrogen that is naturally occurring at that time, and that makes you a bit more warm and social, and nurturing and generous. And it's really that mothering type of energy usually. It's often what people describe as the best version of themselves in that ovulation time, and I definitely feel that. And once you start understanding these different phases, you'll probably start to pick up these little changes. It's all about awareness, and if you're not very aware, you won't know these different things. But hopefully, after today, it will make more sense. I've also broken it down in the different sort of categories. So with mood, you feel really confident, really social, really outward focused. It's a really good time to get out there, to put yourself out there. If you film content, to film content, or do presentations, or do talks. It's just a really outward focused time. Emotionally, we are quite stable, quite warm, very connected. And it's, like I say, a great time for public speaking and just being seen and just being more visible. So I know for myself when I have to film something, I know that in my ovulation time is going to be a really good time for me to do that. Energy wise, again, it's that high energy, peak energy, lots of motivation. That's actually driven a bit by testosterone as well. So with the hormones, we have, like you mentioned, the estrogen is rising in the follicular phase, and at the ovulation time, it's peak estrogen, which then signals to the brain to release LH, which is luteinizing hormone, and then that is what triggers ovulation. But at that same high estrogen peak, there's a peak of testosterone as well, which is really helpful for our drive and motivation. So, with working out, as you mentioned, that's a good time to really push yourself. And a luteal phase run is very different to a ovulation phase run, and people who train all the time will feel that. Um, Really good at multitasking as well, and our communication is usually on point. So I think there's some research about the left and right brain being really well connected at that time, so we can talk really more, like a lot more fluidly. It's almost like that, yeah, get things done energy, like we can push ourselves and do. Whereas in the second half of the cycle, it's more be, like more just be in your body, if that makes sense. Body wise, we feel really strong, glowing, magnetic, really attractive usually at this time as well. And people feel, yeah, they want to be seen. It's that your body's saying you need to go out there, you're fertile now, you need to go and attract a mate and procreate. That's basically what biology is telling us. A bit of increase in sexual desire as well, linking to that. Um, Glowing skin. And then in terms of your cervical mucus, this is where we talk a little bit more about the fertility awareness method, which is what I love talking to women about. But it's when your cervical mucus becomes a little bit more wet and stretchy and visible, and that is literally a sign that you are approaching your ovulation time. And if you are trying to conceive, that's a good time to go about what you need to do in that time. And if you're not wanting to conceive, then obviously avoiding any intimacy during that time. I also teach women about tracking their temperature and that's your basal body temperature, and that is usually it peaks after or it rises after ovulation. So if you're tracking the two of those, you can pretty much pinpoint ovulation. It's very obvious to know your bleed, obviously, because you're bleeding, but it's hard for people to pinpoint ovulation. So if you are tracking the mucus and the mood and the energy and all these different changes, you will be more accurate at your ovulation day or around about that day. Also, some women do experience some ovulation pain as a bit of a twinge or an ache on one side of their abdomen. So those are other signs to look out for. I also wrote down that your sleep can be a bit better as well, and you again with the exercise, and you might have more information about this, but about your digestion being better at that time. So yeah, that's what I have to say about ovulation. It is my favorite, one of my favorite phases.
I also enjoy it so much that it's that summer energy. And I'm a
Yeah.
summer baby, so it is the thing, like it is that high energy, and you can feel the peakness of just your everything. You're also so resilient. I
Yes.
always say this, but it is funny. Like we are business people, we have a newsletter that people can sign up to. Eh? In this
Mm,
phase, I'm so excited. I see people going and leaving also because it happens, but I'm
mhm.
okay. I'm resilient. But if it happens, if someone leaves my newsletter and it's in the luteal phase, I feel like the whole world is collapsing. Like, what did I do wrong? Like that whole thing. So it's just the resiliency of summer. It is a beautiful place, beautiful time.
Mm,
One thing I want to add to that. So for the ladies struggling with the hormone imbalances, so if let's
mm,
say you have a bit of estrogen dominance, which normally manifests as PMS, tender breasts, heavy flow, that means you've been building up a lot of estrogen for all different reasons. You might not be removing it daily through the bowels. Your liver might be a bit under pressure. You might be drinking a lot out of plastic bottles, is increasing your estrogen. So
mm,
that you're in a more of an estrogen dominant state. So
mm.
for you, estrogen ovulation might feel a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, it's a bit like, oh, it's a bit much. Like you feel a bit more anxiety, everything is heightened. So even though all of these seasons has a specific characteristic, it's always so good to track your own symptoms.
Mm.
Because if you realize every ovulation you're feeling anxiety and overwhelm and all those things, then we can ask more questions.
I think that's good to note is that all the things that we're talking about are pretty much textbook. If you have no hormonal imbalances and your cycle's pretty regular and there's no real menstrual issues, then we're going to be having these sorts of cyclical patterns. But if not, and that's a really good point, and that I actually should have added that, but thank you. That's why we are doing this together. Yeah, I love that.
It's so important. And for me, the most beautiful thing about this is it's self-care.
Mm,
Self-care is tracking your emotions, your mood, your body daily.
mm,
Noting down, yo, I'm feeling a bit down. I have anxiety. My digestion is not well. Like something is off. The more you do it, I always say 3 months for anything. It's great to look at patterns over 3 months, and
mm,
then we can work together. And you can tell me, this is what I'm feeling. And we can, Britt and I, we've done this for so long that we can start seeing the why and
mm.
help you understand what your body is telling you. So it's beautiful. The cycle tracking, it just starts there.
I
Every
know.
day, end of the day, how do you feel?
It's so simple, and I don't track as in depth as I used to because I was obviously learning and really eager back a few years ago. Now I just kind of know because my cycle is really regular and I've worked on all the issues that I've needed to. And sometimes, like today, when I said I usually start to feel a bit weird at this time, it's usually my day 21 and 22 when I just feel really strange and out of body in a way, and it hasn't hit me yet. And I only know that because I did all that tracking to pinpoint those patterns and see what's coming up. So I was reading in one of my books earlier. It's a book, Period Power, just in prep for this podcast, and that's such a good book to understand this in even more in depth. So it's by Maisie Hill. She's amazing, and yeah, what was I going to say about that? Oh, she was. What was I going to say about that? I lost my train of thought, but there was a good point that I had there. Oh, she was talking about her client who was tracking her cycle and noted that on day 19 was her bad day. Oh, I remember what it was about. The doctor wanted to put her on antidepressants because she was feeling really depressed and overwhelmed and stressed. And then she found, working with Maisie, that actually it was only those 2 to 3 days of her cycle, and she picked up that was a hormonal thing going on, ditched the antidepressants or didn't even start them, tracked her cycle, and then just worked with her hormonal imbalance. And literally, they wanted to medicate her for depression, and she didn't have to take medication. It was all just hormones. So if we hormones come up again and again, wherever I research, wherever I talk to women in this space, it's hormones. Like we really underestimate how powerful and how controlling they are over our body, our mind, our mood, everything. It's, yeah, again and again, it's hormones.
Wow, I'm getting goosebumps with that story. I
Mm,
think there's so many clients that will relate to that.
mm,
Where there's times in our cycle where we feel a bit up and down, but it literally starts with the mind-body connection.
mm,
It starts with what is your body trying to tell you.
yeah.
The only way you'll know if you ask.
Ask
Only way.
and track and then
Ask and track.
reflect. Yeah.
Of course, of course. So on that note, I think it's a very good note to move into the luteal phase because this
Yeah.
is where women, yes, the PMS comes up. So I actually divided it. Let me explain the luteal phase when your hormones are perfect,
Mm,
and then if you have imbalances,
mm,
and see what you relate to. So the luteal phase is now when your brain thinks, oh, wonderful, you looked attractive, you fertilized your egg. Wow, amazing, you did a great job with that. Now we're gonna make you just nest to
mm,
prepare for the baby. Okay, so that's the energy. Like it is autumn. You're not summer version. You are now going inward. So that is a very different energy. So in a perfect situation is you will just feel a bit more, I don't want to say slower because it sounds negative, but it's not. It is going more, firstly, your brain is so focused on details. You'll see everything. Yes, your husband's towel on the floor. But also your co-workers, the things that irritate you is going to come up because you prepping, you cleaning out for the baby coming. It's like it's a nesting, it's a cleaning phase, which, okay, in the perfect situation is you inward, you detail focused, you can complete tasks, um, you also, all the things that are coming up inside the internal voice, the inner critic, like she's going to tell you things that's wrong. Perfectly, you want to actually journal about it, read about it, discover more about yourself, and do self-care. PMS, prioritize myself. It is this phase. I love it. So that's the perfect situation. You're not supposed to be. Let me now sketch the other side of it. Super irritated, snappy, having a very bad temper, having extreme moods, like very ups, very downs, very depressive states, very intense anxiety. And then on the body side, the bloating, the headaches, the water retention, um, the breast tenderness, of course. So those are more signs of like, or you're pushing it too hard, like you're trying to be the summer version of yourself and your body is telling you slow down. Or it might be the balance, like too much estrogen versus progesterone, because you only make progesterone when you ovulate. Okay.
mm,
So on birth control, you don't make progesterone. So for some ladies on it, you might have a bit more PMS. Okay. So the big thing, and I want you to add a few things to this, Britt, but The big thing with the luteal phase, firstly, you are a different version. You're autumn. You're not the summer Brit. Like, and I think the world does not really have a lot of space for that for us because we have to be the same every day. Our calendars are set up to be the same every day, and we're conditioned to be, but we're not. We fluctuate, we flow, and there's so much beauty in the autumn. You can finish so much. And I think for me, as a businesswoman, we work, like we continue. But I know that finishing tasks make me feel amazing. When I little bit less social is definitely easier for me. But it's a beautiful time. You can complete so much, you can prioritize yourself. And the moment you give back, you nurture yourself again, you actually have more energy in your next cycle. Go a bit slower, and then your energy is a lot more balanced than just giving and giving and giving in summer. Like you're not summer the whole time.
I love that. We want to be summer all the time, but our hormones have a different plan for us.
Yes.
I love what you said about the towel on the floor and just like those, like your coworkers will irritate you and stuff. And I wanted to touch on the fact that that's because in our luteal phase, our resting cortisol level is higher, and that's nature protecting your potential pregnancy. So it because you've ovulated, it doesn't know yet if there is a fertilization. It thinks that you're pregnant. Your body thinks it's pregnant. So you have to clean up your environment. And I got this so crazy last month, never before. I cleaned my entire house in like 3 or 4 hours. I had my headphones on, I was just going for it. And then I kind of stopped and I was like, oh my word, that was crazy, Britt. My husband wasn't in the house and he calls me crazy eyes cleaning lady when I have my like get out of my way, I'm cleaning the house. And it was crazy. I really like embodied that like nesting for the first time in a very long time. And that like got me calm and settled and ready to have my bleed or to continue a pregnancy if you are pregnant. So it's really that nesting, that getting things out the way. Because the thing is that your brain is not really pissed off about the towel. It's the fact that you could trip over that and hurt yourself and, cause danger to the baby. So it's your brain's natural, like, yeah, a way of protecting you and your baby. Um, I also wanted to add that that luteal time is, if we like think of the summer Bia, as you mentioned, she's really good at socializing and getting out there. That type of Bia or version of Bia does not want to be sitting behind a laptop doing audits and doing editing and doing that sort of stuff. That's editing and auditing and finalizing and making little changes. If you want to write your blog and it's just like a whole like I don't know, explosion of words in the summer, that's like your brain being really creative. Then the autumn version goes and edits all of that and makes it perfect. So that's something else is that even though in the summer you feel there's lots of energy, it doesn't mean you have to do those boring jobs of your business or your life or whatever, like life admin stuff. That sort of stuff is you're really good at doing that in the luteal. And the luteal has a bad rep, and I really personally dreaded my luteal. I struggled quite a lot with PMDD at one point, which is just not fun at all. And I really, really, really had to work on my cycle to try and get that to balance a bit better. But I don't know where I was going with that. See, my brain's also luteal now. We both either early or late luteal. And I think it's just the whole point of both our stories and what we've said is that you have to just sort of track your cycle, understand where you are at that point. And yeah, I don't know what I wanted to say about that.
I want to add on that, Britt, because
Yeah.
you just quickly mentioned PMDD. So that's the extreme case of PMS. So I also want to really, if you are a lady listening to this and you can relate to that extremeness, like I have clients that come to me and the anxiety is next level. They're so depressed, like, and they have that week where they feel out of control. I
Mm.
want to say that I really understand. I really do. I've been there, and I want to acknowledge that realness. It's so real. I think society also says, it's just PMS. Like it shoves it off like it is not that intense. But if you are currently in that space, it is hectic. Like everything feels like the world is going to end.
Mm.
So I just want to say that you can get out of it. Where
Mm-hmm.
you are now, yes, you're feeling it. You're allowed to feel it. It's so real. But the fact that Britt and I and so many of our patients and clients have done the simple things, right? Simple, beautiful things can help you get out of it. So that you don't have to feel that. Because it's normal to feel more inward, but not that extreme.
Exactly. Like you said with summer, it's normal to feel that peak energy, but
Mm.
not to the point where it's overwhelming you. And it's normal to feel a bit more introverted and slower and introspective in the luteal, but not to the point where it's like debilitating you. And PMDD is a mental health disorder now. It's recognized as that. And I believe it's 1 in 20 women. So it's pretty common. And I have a personal belief that it's because we're not living in this cycle and our body, like we're not slowing down and honoring our luteal, honoring our menstrual. Because I did a lot of work into honoring that and really just listening and slowing down and going inwards and letting people around me know that this is what's happening and taking more time off work or going for a massage or something like that. And through that and through more natural ways, I was able to overcome that. And I think PMDD can come and go. If you're not making the changes, it's going to stay. And often, again, they medicate for that. They do often put you on the pill, first of all, to just stop everything, or they give you antidepressants. And it's okay to do that. It really, really is okay. It's just there needs to be an end goal of trying to listen to and dig deep and fix the root cause.
Yeah, of course. So before we go into the menstrual and the report card phase, I just want to end with the luteal on first, I also 100% believe it's returning to being cyclical,
Mhm.
just that. And I love working with the seasons analogy because it's so visual. We all
Mhm.
understand it. And if you can just implement that to yourself, don't change your whole world. Just be like, I always tell my clients, build in a winter in your
Mhm.
calendar. And that winter can be if you're working full time in an office or the luteal phase, you're not going to change your work or your working hours. Just become aware. Awareness is the first step to healing, 100%.
I love
And then
that.
I think, yeah, there's so much we can talk about this again, but just the last one on the nutritional side. Food is medicine. I see it every single day with my clients. It's beautiful. And the food really is a foundation for balancing your hormones so that you can just feel good again. So, yeah, there's so much, but that's for next episode. So, Britt, let's move into the menstrual phase and, yeah, share the insights on it.
Yeah, definitely. So we did a whole episode on the luteal phase, actually. So if you want to go listen to that, that was both of us deep in the luteal phase, talking about the luteal phase, and I love that episode. So if you want to learn more about that phase, because it is a tricky phase. And one thing I want to say is that if you look at Maisie Hill's work, and if you look at all the stuff you can read online and all the books you can find out about this, there are the positives and the negatives, or the superpowers and the drawbacks of every single phase. And the luteal has really got a bad rep because women are so imbalanced. But there's a lot of beauty. One thing I wanted to say is that we're really intuitive in the luteal phase and we really do what we want to do because estrogen is starting to drop off, because the first half of the phase is quite a people pleasing phase. You can kind of do more for others and put yourself out there, and then once we're in that second half, it is a you do what you want to do, and it's about respecting yourself and setting boundaries and protecting and preserving that energy that we spoke about and preparing for that bleed. So now think of autumn, the leaves have fallen, the colors have shifted. It's a beautiful, beautiful season. And now we're into the winter time, the menstrual phase. So this is where people started when they track their cycle, they track day one as the first day of bleeding. So if you are having spotting in your cycle, that is actually still part of your luteal phase. And then once you have full bleeding and full like red period blood, that will be the start of the new phase, which is the day one. Hormone levels are really low. So with temperature tracking, if you are tracking temperature, often about 2 to 3 days before your bleed, you'll see the temperature start to drop off, and that's a sign that your progesterone is dropping off because the body realizes there's no implantation, there's no pregnancy. We have to start again and try again, but we have to clear out the womb so that we can restart, and that's what triggers your actual period. It's our, even more than the luteal phase, it's our real deep rest phase and a time for slowing down and a time for letting go. So it can be really introspective, this phase as well. And it's a time where you can analyze what you've had or what you've been through in the past three different phases, figure out what's working, what's not working, and then implement that. And as much as it is a physical release, I also recommend that people do a bit of, if they're struggling, let's say, do a bit of journaling in that luteal phase, because that's when we are the truest, I think, the truest version of ourselves actually in that phase. We journal all the stuff we do want, we don't want, and then in the bleed, we just have to like energetically and physically let go and reset. For women struggling with PMDD, the menstrual phase is actually a huge sigh of relief because you're like, oh, finally I can breathe. All of the turmoil in the luteal is done and I can feel a bit more like myself. So I've definitely been there. And it's also for some women who struggle with period symptoms and who maybe are wanting to conceive, it's quite a negative part of their cycle because they get all their period pain, they get all of those heavy bleeding symptoms and fatigue, and they just feel really bad. Or they're wanting to conceive and they get their period. It's a really negative time. So it can be both positive and negative. Just wanted to touch on that. In terms of our mood, it's quite a quiet, reflective, inward, like I said, what's working, what's not working, trying to make some changes. We're very sensitive just in general. So you get lots of people like, oh, what are you on your period? And it's just like, actually, we are cyclical and we are just more sensitive. So a joke that my husband told me 2 weeks ago when I was in my summer phase was really funny, and now it's not funny. Like it's really annoying. That's more luteal, but it can carry into the menstrual time. We're very gentle, we're very intuitive, and we often have a strong desire to be alone. So we want to go into that like menstrual cave and just have that solitude time. Energy wise, I think we've mentioned this already, but ovulation peak energy in the luteal starts to drop off, and at menstruation time, it's really at its lowest. And that just means we have to have a bit more of a slower pace and also take more time for rest and sleep. And I don't know about you, but I love napping in my menstrual phase. It's one of my, if I have the time, again, if it works on my off day and I've got the time, great. If not, I just try block out little times in my diary. So we have to just work with that. But it is a time to really just slow down. Your body's been through all this hormonal changes, and now we're at the bottom, and it's time to rest. Body wise, again, this is when people can really struggle with cramping, with bloating, with heavy bleeding. It's all those extremes that we spoke about, and that's what I'm realizing as we actually talk through all of this is that having a little bit of cramping is okay, having a little bit of heaviness, having a bit of just a bit of discomfort is okay, but it's the extremeness of bleeding where you have to, have a tampon and a pad and you're bleeding through that. That's not normal. It can be common, but it's not a normal thing to experience. So it's all these extremes that are symptoms and signals to the body and to you that there's something going on, possibly a hormonal imbalance. And as Bia mentioned, if you have high estrogen, which is what we call estrogen dominance, that can be the fact that your estrogen is too high or that your progesterone is too low, not counterbalancing the effects of high estrogen. So, with estrogen, you mentioned that it builds the lining of the uterus, and your progesterone in the second half is supposed to maintain that lining. But if you are building it up so much so that you're going to have to shed it, if it's really extreme and heavy, that's often a sign that you have too much lining, too much estrogen building that, because estrogen builds things, right? We can also feel really tired, so really fatigued in that phase. And I also wrote here a bit more intuitive of like we feel more in touch with how we really feel. So we really good. We could be better at setting boundaries, but it's a time where we can set those boundaries and plan ahead. And that's why, again, cycle tracking is just the answer to everything. Is it always comes down to cycle tracking, because if you can track ovulation, as I pinpointed that 6 days ago I ovulated based on my mucus and temperature, and now I can plan ahead, and I know that next week when I have that meeting that I spoke about, I know I'm going to be super premenstrual potentially on day one. So it's just about planning ahead. And if you don't know how to pinpoint ovulation, it's going to be hard to predict your bleed. One note on the follicular phase is that in the first half, that can fluctuate. So if you are more stressed, or if you have illness or anything that can delay your ovulation, that's going to have a longer ovulation, or a longer, a lot later ovulation day, and then your luteal phase should stay the same. So if people are having a 28-day cycle and all of a sudden they have a 35-day cycle, they think they have a delayed period, but it's actually a delayed ovulation because the luteal phase, for the most part, stays pretty constant. So that's really important for me and tracking ovulation, because I know my luteal phase is around 13 to 14 days at this point, and I can literally count ahead 2 weeks after ovulation, and that's my bleed day, or that should be. And once you have more of that regular tracking and you can notice your patterns, you can pinpoint it almost to the day, which is really good for planning and trying to live more in that cyclical pattern. So that's all my menstrual info. I've probably missed something. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I love it. I really, um, yeah, you explain it so well. And it's exactly that. I think understanding your cycles is the foundation of everything.
Mm,
And like I mentioned again, like building in a winter, sort of.
mm,
Because just looking outside, you in winter now, I'm in summer.
mm-hmm,
Like it is a very different energy. It's very, very different. And if you can just, and as a practical person, building in a winter, okay, but now you corporate, super busy, how do you do it? It can literally be when you make your cup of tea, do some breath work,
mm,
reconnect with where you are in your cycle, and be like, okay, cool. I'm in my menstrual phase, or I'm in my luteal phase, and all I'm doing is this moment when I'm making tea, which is 5 minutes, is my rest phase. It
mm,
can be that simple. If that's your time you have, let's say you have a lot of kids or one kid or whatever, you probably don't have all the time to go for massages and all these things.
mm,
What can you do? All of us are making multiple cups of tea a day.
mm.
You taking a bath, that can be your win. That can be your nurturing time. So if it's 5 minutes a day, that little self-care moment is going to make a difference. It's that
Yeah.
simple.
I love bringing in the breath. Again, it comes down to the breath so often because it's free, it's with you all the time, and you can learn how to control that breath, and it really does make a difference. One more thing I just wanted to add before we start to wrap up is just that these energies, these four different distinct energies, they don't have to be like your bleed and your winter doesn't have to be on your period. You could feel really wintry 2 days before in the luteal technically, but that energy starts to shift. It's all these transitions, just like the seasons. You don't go from one day you're in summer and then you are, in winter. It doesn't work like that, or in autumn. There's a bit of a transition. So when you start to track, you can notice your transitional areas as well. And I've also noticed that the more in sync you are and the more balanced you are hormonally, the smoother those transitions are, and there's not this like abrupt change from one to the next. So all of these symptoms and differences or deviations from what we think is normal and what most people experience when they're balanced, it's just information. It's information for you to track and to note and to say, what is happening? So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that was a really, really good foundation. In the podcast, we're going to go deeper in all different ways and different phases and different things. So also just for the listeners, if you have any questions, reach out to us, post on the YouTube link, comment. Like it's really good for us to know what you want to learn about. That's very important for us. And I love it. I think if you can just take a pen and paper, start writing down, even if it's in your daily calendar, where you
Mm,
are, how you're feeling every single day, yeah, you'll start feeling a difference and reconnecting with yourself, which is the main purpose of this whole thing. Like learn about yourself, reconnect, and a lot of your symptoms will start reducing, and you will know yourself to know what questions you should ask so you can work on the root cause. That's my main thing that you have to remember of this podcast. We work on root cause.
mm.
There's something deeper. If you have a symptom, there's something deeper asking you to listen. Just start tracking.
Yeah, literally. I wanted to say something, and because I'm luteal, it's gone. I think,
Bank it. Bank it for the next one.
yeah, honestly, I get these fleeting thoughts, and then I like get into what you're saying, and I'm really like listening to what you're saying, and then my thought just poof, it's gone. So,
I hear you.
um,
So I'm
but yeah,
also on that note, on the luteal phase. So any last thoughts, Britt?
I'm literally trying to find what I wanted to say, and I can't find it in my brain. Um, I think the main thing is just track. Keep
Yeah.
tracking. And oh, what I wanted to say, I found it. Takes a bit of time sometimes. It's when I learned about this stuff in the beginning, I was already off the pill for maybe 3 or 4 years, and I had no awareness. I only once I became aware did all of the stuff that we spoke about on today's episode make sense. When you told me that, like when I learned that you have cervical mucus, I was like, no, that's nonsense. I didn't believe it. And then I started tracking and I was like, oh my word, now I know what that is. And it's about it's about the mind-body connection, as you always say. It's just being more in touch and being aware. If you can take one thing away from this, it's obviously root cause. We always treat in root cause, but it's being aware. It's all about menstrual cycle awareness, body awareness, and listening to the body and tracking. What you can't do that. You can think about it, cool, but if you have it on paper and you can go back and almost like in your menstrual phase when you want to reflect, you can go back and say, oh, cool, there's this pattern, or I can work on that. It takes a long time though. That's one thing to say. It's not just a quick fix. It's like you have to have a 28 day or 28 times three, however long your cycle is, days to do that. So it does take a long time. It is a long haul that we aiming for here. But that's all I want to say. If you don't want to say anything else, as always, we always end with stay in sync.
Same thing.
Bye.
Bye.